You've seen them, right? All of a sudden, a new steel tower pops up, stretching into the sky, promising us all better service. But when one is planned for your neighborhood, it kicks up a ton of questions. I mean, who actually gets to say yes or no? Is it your local town hall, or somebody else entirely? The answer, it turns out, really gets to the heart of who holds the power in our communities.
So yeah, let's just ask it directly. Have you ever wondered who gives the green light for these things? It sounds like a pretty simple question, but the answer, well, it pulls back the curtain on a much bigger power struggle over how much say we really have in what gets built in our own backyards.
And that's really the nut of what we're digging into here. In Connecticut, the authority to approve or deny these towers was basically taken out of the hands of hundreds of towns and given to just one single statewide council. And that move, well, it changed the game completely for local communities and residents.
So what does this new reality actually look like on the ground? Well, it's a huge shift. It's fundamentally changed the role of local government in a way that kind of swaps real authority for a chance to be heard. And you can see it plain as day on this timeline. I mean, look at this. Back in the 70s and 80s, towns had what you'd call meaningful input. Then, in the 90s, that got downgraded to just advisory. Fast forward to today, and they're basically just record contributors. It's been this slow, methodical chipping away of local control, decade after decade.
You know, if you've ever gone to a public hearing, major case, and walked away feeling like you were just talking to a wall, this quote right here, this is why. The way the process is set up, by the time you get to that public hearing, the real debate is often already over. That feeling of being ignored, it's not you, it's baked right into the system's design.
And this just sums it up perfectly. At the end of the day, towns and their residents can speak up, they can submit all the evidence they want, they can build a whole case, but they can't actually stop a project. They have a voice, for sure, but they've completely lost the power of the veto.
So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? To really get it, we've got to go back in time and look at the origins of this powerful body, the Connecticut Siting Council.
So, the Siting Council was born back in 1971, and it was created for a very specific task, to handle these gigantic energy projects. Think massive power plants, huge transmission lines, things that were considered unavoidable, that served a whole region and were just way too big for any one town to deal with. Centralizing power was supposed to be the exception, not the rule.
And this chart really gets to the core of the problem. It's what you'd call a structural mismatch. See, the Siting Council was built for the job on the left, big, unavoidable regional stuff. But now it's being used for the job on the right. Cell towers, which are often modular, sometimes duplicative, and really, at their heart, are local land use issues. It is literally like trying to use a sledgehammer to turn a tiny screw. It's just the wrong tool for the job.
Okay, so you often hear this argument that, well, we have to do it this way because of federal law. But is that really true? Let's take a second and clear up what that big 1996 Telecommunications Act actually requires.
All right, let's break this down. The federal law does lay down some rules. It says, for example, that towns can't deny a tower because of worries about radio frequency health effects, and they can't say no just because there's already some cell service. But, and this is a huge but, look at what it doesn't do. It absolutely does not require states to centralize this authority. It doesn't ban environmental reviews, and it for sure doesn't wipe out local land use authority.
And that's the bottom line right there. This was a choice. The federal law left the door wide open for local control to continue. The system Connecticut has today is because of decisions made at the state level, not because Washington, D.C. forced their hand.
So this brings us to another huge part of the puzzle. What about environmental laws? I mean, even with this one council in charge, those laws should still matter, right? Well, it's all about how they're applied in the real world. This phrase right here is everything. When people bring up legitimate environmental concerns, about wetlands or wildlife or historical areas, this is the response they often get in the final approval. It's basically a promise. Don't worry, we'll figure all those details out later, after we've already approved the project.
But that whole "we'll deal with it later" thing flies directly in the face of a core principle of environmental law called pre-decisional review. Laws like SEPA are built on one simple idea. You have to analyze and understand the potential harm before you give the okay, not just promise you'll manage it after the fact. So by kicking these critical environmental questions down the road to a phase that happens after approval, this process, well, it basically guts the entire purpose of these laws, which is to make smart decisions up front and prevent damage before it happens. So, okay, given everything we've just talked about, where does that leave regular people in towns who want to have a real say? It's clear that just showing up to a hearing might not cut it anymore. What's needed is a totally modern playbook, one that focuses on the real points of leverage.
First, let's talk about what doesn't work. If your whole strategy is just counting on the sitting council hearings or waiting until the last minute to object or basing your entire argument on local zoning, you're probably not going to get very far. The system is pretty much designed to bypass those arguments.
Instead, the real pressure points are somewhere else entirely. We're talking about using legal tools to force a federal environmental review, or taking the state to court to enforce its own laws. It's about pushing for actual legislative reform, demanding transparency on budgets and fees. And maybe most important of all, it's about towns coordinating with each other to show up as a united front.
Look, it's really easy to feel discouraged, because this is an uphill battle. The system is pretty much on autopilot to approve things, but that absolutely does not mean your efforts are pointless. Every single piece of paper you file, every expert you bring in, every argument you make, it all builds the official record. And that record is crucial for making these other, more effective strategies actually work.
And this really brings us to the most important takeaway from all of this: the right of towns to govern themselves. It's called home rule, and all those environmental laws we have, they were never actually repealed. They weren't erased, they were just sidelined. They were procedurally displaced by a process designed to centralize power and kick the can down the road.
And that leaves us with one last really big question. Just knowing that these rights and laws still exist, that they haven't disappeared, gives communities leverage. And it forces all of us to think bigger than just fighting one tower at a time. It makes us ask, if a system is designed to approve, what's it going to take to redesign it for balance?